Yes, I am. Beethoven is my go-to guy. And I'm going to try to wake up quickly. So this is Symphony Week for me. So I'm coming down every day for rehearsals for the 6th Mahler Symphony, and I'm blowing celesta for them. It's strange. I have about 60 seconds worth of music to play for this hour-and-a-half symphony. So I get to sit right in the middle of the whole thing and listen, and then once in a while play a few notes. So it's great. First of all, I didn't ask, how much time do we have?
How much time do you need?
Well, I can talk for a long time, but 45 minutes? Is that
I think
good?
that could be okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hope you're not wanting 2 hours of talking.
No.
Usually
Half
try
hour?
to be wrapped up by 11. is what we
Yeah.
try
Oh,
to do.
okay.
So,
And I hope that you will, ask questions. And in fact, if there's things in here that you really want me to get to, then just tell me. So, boy, it's really hard to kind of introduce this topic. We've all played and taught Beethoven sonatas. We all know the Opus 49 sonatas, but really there aren't much in the way of easy. There's very little that you can give to an early student in the actual 32 sonatas. We've tried to pick out movements that you can do. Like, do you use, like, for the first movement, what's the very first sonata movement that you might give to an early advanced student other than the Opus 49? Arlene, what would you?
Maybe Opus 79.
Right. Which is sometimes
Opus 2, I don't know.
Opus 2. For me, it's usually the pathetique middle movement
Yes.
is quite doable for a lot of students. So that's often my first one that I give, but not the rest of the piece. And there's other middle movements that are easier. My first sonata was the very first one, the first movement. That was my intro, and that's not a bad idea. It's just it's a hard piece to play. It's got technical requirements. With Beethoven, you often have a piece might be short but quite difficult. So there's your choice. You don't want to give them something that's 8 pages long or 10, 12 pages long as their first thing. So I tended to try to pick shorter things to talk about. For instance, the Tempest Sonata is a very compact piece, and that can often be, that's one of my also first ones, just because it's not as long, even though it has plenty to work on in there. So early Beethoven, I described as super Haydn, and so if they've played Haydn before, they have an idea of the kind of sounds that they should expect out of, especially Opus 2, number 1, the very first sonata. And I know this is a little bit trite, but I tried to sum up, so you can sum up the difference in difficulty between Haydn sonatas and Beethoven's early ones as a lot more notes played a lot faster. And I know that sounds, I don't know, maybe trite, but I think there's a big case for that. There's just a lot to do, and speed is a big factor eventually. I'm not going to list all of the different technical challenges. You can read those, but there's certainly a lot. And Beethoven, being a pianist, was very interested in promoting his own abilities, so he wrote that into his sonatas. And it's good for students to know that something like that, it's supposed to look hard, it's supposed to be hard, and just because it's their first one, Beethoven meant these to show himself off. I mean, Beethoven showing himself off, it's going to be quite a trick. So let's see. I want to get right to some music here. So we'll talk about the first sonata and just the very opening statement. And I'm sorry, I did not copy every example that I'm going to use, but a certain amount. So we start with this Mannheim rocket idea. And And these staccatos are like Haydn, very, very short. People tend to, students, everybody, we're built to be lazy. And when we play staccato, at least students, tend to do them kind of like how you bounce a ball. The ball goes down, the ball comes up. It takes about the same amount of time to go down as it does to come up. So their hand does that to play staccatos, which gives you kind of fat staccatos. They're a little too long. And you must show them that you have to spend a lot less time on that initial. It takes way more energy to play a very short staccato than a normal kind of a sound. So it's mainly about energy. There's some, let's see, there's some, now, I might as well talk right away about cheating. Because I cheat a little bit on Beethoven. I try to be as literal as I possibly can. But when you can't be literal, I think there are good ways to cheat a little bit to make things doable and to get the same effect that you see on the page. Well, like Beethoven's tempos. I have played the Hammer Clavier Sonata, and nobody that I know is interested in trying to play it at the metronome marking that he says, which is ridiculously fast. So I play it at a reasonable tempo. Sometimes he will have the hand distribution can be fixed up a little bit to make things a little easier. There's a spot here. No, that's not the spot. Where is it? Oh, wrong. Oh, about measure 12. There's some notes in the right hand you can put in the left hand. I think we've done that before, and that's okay to do. Broken octaves are a big one. And this is not a good place for a student to learn how to play broken octaves. I think it's very helpful to know how to do it. And as soon as I hit broken octaves, I start talking about how your arm works. And I'm surprised that most students, college students also, do not know the names of their arm bones. So we have to go over, what are your arm bones called? And what are they, by the way?
Radius and ulna.
Radius and ulna. Yeah. And the reason you have to know the radius is the bone that's attached at your thumb. And if you take your palm and turn it over like that, the radius bone does that. So it actually makes a half circle, more or less. And it's that half circle radial motion. It's not rotation. It's radial, like making a compass move. And it's that motion, basically raising your thumb and lowering it. That motion is the tremolo motion. And they're not used to that. They're not sure how to do that. Because it's, where else do you do this all the time, except turning a key in a lock. So I call it the key turning motion. Anyway, you have to try to develop that in a pretty pure way to do tremolos. I don't know, octave tremolos don't really work to involve a lot of other things than just that. I'm a big believer in using all kinds of three-dimensional directions and things when you need to, but not for octaves. So that's step one, is try to develop that. When I was a kid, my mother was in a banjo club, and so I learned how to play 4-string banjo. And one of the things that I couldn't believe how cool that was is how the leaders up in front could make this very feathery tremolo sound, and they were using that exact same motion. I couldn't do it because I'm left-handed, and it was with the right hand, and I had no idea how they were getting that just feathery sound. I still want to be able to do that, but I can do it on the piano. Okay. Muscular strength is kind of a big thing in this movement. I know little kids, people sometimes have little kids play a movement like this, and it's possible, but to be honest, I think you have to have a certain amount of muscular strength to just keep up with this piece. There's a lot of chords, there's a lot of fast changes, and so have no interest in giving this to somebody who's still that tall. They might be able to play the notes, but I don't think they can bring off the piece, or even should be trying to bring off a piece like this. Anyway, it's physically difficult. It's athletic. Oh yes, I'm just thinking in particular of this ending section here. Let's see here. There's a lot that goes into that. And that's not really a technical solution to that. It's just saying you must be this tall to play this piece. Should be written in the music. Do you have any other questions about this movement? I'm going to kind of move quickly through what I have on my sheet if there's anything else you want to talk about. And certainly quick changes in all of the sonatas are a difficulty. And I have an approach to quick changes, as you probably do too. But let's go right to the Opus 2 number 3, which I think is the second sonata that I'm learning. Has anybody ever played or taught Opus 2 number 2, the one in A major? It's pretty rare though, isn't it? It's why is that? I haven't figured that out. Is it the key?
I think so. I think it's the key to get scared out.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny stuff in there. And also, when do you ever hear Beethoven's Second Symphony, or his Second String Quartet, or his Second Piano Trio? There's something about two with Beethoven. Or his, the big one, nobody plays the Second Piano Concerto unless they have just done everything and have nothing left to play. Then they play the B-flat concerto. So I think he has a problem with twos. So, anyway, third sonata. Sorry. Everyone's favorite opening here. Let's see if I can do it. Not all warmed up at all. Not quite. Now it does not say that you should try to connect those notes. There's no slur going all the way across. To me, the only way to get at those, to get these sixteenths the way we want them, is first of all to keep your hand in motion while you're playing that half note. The student can see that half note and go chord, and then try to start over again. Da, 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 and try to connect it, and that doesn't work too well. If you, so you have to keep your hand moving. Dum, da, 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 da. Keep it moving towards those 16th notes, and then a very, very slight lift in front of the 16th notes allows you to get a good start on them. But we don't want, because that sounds like two separate things. So if we're not going to connect the half note to the other notes, we have to make it sound like we're connecting those ideas. And the way to do that is to make the volume level the same. So you start the 16th notes at the same volume that they're hearing the half note at. In other words, start them a little softer. And it'll sound like you're connecting them even with a little lift in front of us. So I go, bad, better, something like that. I've got a tiny lift, but I keep the volume levels the same. And then I don't get, and we've also heard this with, they're going to want to lift in between those, and they sound like two separate things. It's kind of the same opening. Anyway, that's how I treat it. As far as, well, there's two things going on there. One is fingers. And I generally believe that we play the piano about 20% with our fingers and 80% with our arms and everything else. We use our fingers as little as we can. I'm not a person that says you should do this to play the piano. You should do this and have your fingers do a little bit. Because our arms are better at playing things than our fingers are, I think. So yes, of course we have to train our fingers and make them able. But here's a spot where you cannot get around that. You just can't do this all with your arm. So yes, that has to be some finger action in there. But it can't be only fingers. Your arm has to control the phrase of it. So we have finger action, and I'm going to use this word, subsumed under your arm's action. So you have a little thing's going here and a bigger thing here. So you have to have a little arm help with that and not just fingers. If it's just fingers, it wasn't too bad, I guess. It's going to sound stiff. Fingers only always sound stiff to me. And so even with that little bit, we need some arm help. A few bars later, we have this music. Like that, and that could well be string quartet music. Very often you find string quartet music found in the middle of the sonatas. Does anybody know which sonata started out as a string quartet? Or maybe I should say, became a string quartet. He arranged it for string quartet, I think after he wrote it as a sonata. It's the 9th one in E. It's Opus 14, number 1.
Yeah. With repeated chords and motion.
Yeah. So he rearranged that as a string quartet. And I think that's a good clue that he's writing string quartet within his sonatas as well as orchestral music and everything else. So he's thinking beyond just pianos. But a student has to see that these are parts. They're not chords. And you have to draw their attention to stems up and stems down and have them play each part and even call it violin 1 or violin 2. And then there's the viola part, and then there's the cello part which has the melody. And even get them to, like a fugue, get them to play parts together, play the violin with the viola part and combine them different ways. So that they can really hear what's going on, and they don't simply play them as vertical chords. And I also use the example that if it were choral music, the sopranos would have their part, and the sopranos would have their part. And they need to see that each part that they're playing is linear and not just chunk chords, because that makes it sound pretty bad. Right past that, we have a very exercisey section. It will seem kind of impossible when they first try to do that, because a student will see that as 16 uninterrupted notes. And they will try to connect them all the same way. They'll try to, it's like it's one legato line. Well, we do want to give that impression, but we can't do it that way technically. At least I can't. I have to divide it up into this, and then this, and into these separate motions. So you would break them out and do each one of those, and have a little lift. Even when you're doing it up to tempo, I would not try to connect across like, but I would go, but without that gigantic break in it. So that very fast little hop is crucial for a lot of reasons. It makes it clearer sounding. It controls their tempo. Anybody have trouble with students who speed too much? All of mine do, every single one. And so, in a lot of classical pieces, I have them lift a lot in between, like at bar lines and half bars, and between sections, and those little tiny lifts hold them back. And it also helps the music breathe a lot, so that's very common. Anyway, that's